Hello and welcome to another Sky Sports Fantasy Football Game Week preview. We are going on to Game Week 14 now after an absolutely dreadful Game Week 13. We're starting off with the transfers this week because for some reason the Sky Twitter page never posted the average remaining transfers for the week on Friday, so we have none of that to show you in this video, but we are starting off with the transfers. We will look more into Game Week 13 as we look towards the later kind of part of the video. But looking at some transfers for this week, in terms of players in, Heung-min Son and Darwin Núñez seem to be pretty popular transfers over the past week. Son, I imagine, would have been last night with a lot of people bringing him in as a captaincy option. He did get 4 points, which would have been 8 as a captain, so it was probably one of the only scores, to be honest, that kind of made up for what happened last night, especially as well with people who went for Cole Palmer. Did seem like a good move. I've seen a lot of people doing the Kamba to Palmer as that transfer. Probably didn't captain Palmer, mind you, but still ended up working out for those who did go for him. Núñez as well, another popular transfer. Unfortunately didn't do too well, hit the bar, and you probably would have expected something from Luton. Again, Mo Salah as well, another popular transfer this week as he was last week. Same with Ollie Watkins, two players that kind of are just essential in Sky right now, have good fixtures and are in good form, so it's kind of just players that you need to start kind of making sure you have. Another player, James Maddison, he did come off with an injury yesterday. I think what I heard was he rolled over the ball and he was taken off as a precaution, so I don't think it's going to be too bad for him, but I think most of us were planning on taking him out at the weekend anyway. It is just unfortunate for those who did bring him in for a captaincy yesterday. In terms of players out, Erling Haaland at 3% is the most transferred player out over the weekend. I think that's going to massively backfire on people. I think Haaland will start tonight in the Champions League. That's my opinion on it. I'm just guessing. It is 5 o'clock at night right now, so we are getting the lineups in about 2 hours, but I do think Haaland will start, and I think he definitely will be fit again for the weekend, so I think a lot of people are going to really start to struggle with no Haaland, and probably might end up just bringing him straight back in once the news comes out that he'll be okay. Odegaard, another player who is not fit, the same with Isak. Two players who were highly transferred out last week as well. The same again for this week. Marcus Rashford, I'm surprised so many people still actually have him in their teams, but again, someone who was transferred out quite a lot, which is quite surprising to be fair, considering they do have Luton at home at the weekend. I suppose if you were still going to have him, you might as well just keep him in for that game on Saturday and then look to transfer him out. But he is a popular transfer out this week, along with Ward-Prowse, who just again was on the list last week as well, and just isn't really performing the kind of ways that he was at the start of the season. So looking at that, most people again are going to be quite unfortunate with the Maddison transfers. And Son coming in as well, one of the only players that didn't actually get injured or something wrong with them in the Spurs team last night, but who knows what's really going to happen with him, considering he's not going to have a strong Spurs team behind him to provide him with some chances. So it's really just Spurs and Liverpool dominating the transfers in this week. Not really too much else to go on about that. We will speak more about Spurs and what to do with those players as we get into the video, but for now we're going to have a look at our captaincies. So for our captaincies this week then, a bit of a mixed bag. We do have a fairly easy captain for Saturday. I have went for Bukayo Saka against Burnley. You could have possibly before last night had an argument to go with Heung-min Son, but I think Spurs are barely going to have a team on Saturday if these injuries end up coming to something, so I think it's just the safer option to go with the home game, and it is the easier game as well against Burnley at home. And as you can see on the screen, we do have Saka's recent record against Burnley. He has only played 4 games and he's yet to get a return against them, but the last time he played them was kind of like the Sean Dyche era They have not played them this season with Vincent Kompany, and Burnley are really looking like one of the worst defensive teams in the league this season. You can see that with 14 goals conceded in their last 5 games. Saka, though, hasn't really been on top form with 0 goals and 1 assist in his last 5, but this is definitely the kind of game where he could get right back on track. In terms of other captaincies, I really even wouldn't look at Man United and Luton. That's one game that you could even maybe predict that Luton would win that, or at least get a result, especially after the result against Liverpool last week. So I would totally ignore Man United. Other than that, I've went for Kieran Trippier as the second best option. As a game against Bournemouth, they do concede a lot of goals, and even though it is an away game, I definitely could be expecting a Trippier return there. One that you could hope for a clean sheet as well, and I just think he could be a very decent differential captain on that day. And then I've went for Saliba as well. I think it's more of the safer option as the third pick. Again, it's another one. I think a clean sheet is pretty expected from Arsenal at the weekend. You would expect passes as well. However, Burnley do keep a lot of possession, so maybe not guaranteed in that sense, but I think you can hope for a clean sheet for Arsenal. But for me, I do think Saka is definitely the number one pick there. For Sunday, I think is where you can kind of go for a differential, because I think the 3 captaincies I've picked here could all do something, but again, the same as this week, could all just blank. Salah is playing against Brentford, has a decent record against Brentford with 3 games played and 2 goals scored. However, Brentford are fairly solid defensively. They are very hit and miss. They will have a very, very good game against one team and then play very poorly against another, so it depends what kind of Brentford turns up at the weekend. But again, it's one that Salah could maybe score a goal or 2, or could blank and that game finishes something like 0-0, 1-0. But then I've went for Haaland at second place against Chelsea. We all know Haaland isn't as good away from home as he is at home. Chelsea just off the back of a 4-1 win against Spurs as well. And Chelsea are, I think, 4th place in terms of expected goals conceded. So they are very, very decent defensively, despite not really getting the results. So that is again another game that Haaland could blank. So it could be one week that you go for the differential pick and pick Ollie Watkins at home against Fulham. That could end up working out quite well. But I have went for Salah. I do think the home fixture could definitely prove to be one of the better picks of the week. So looking at some transfers then, obviously we do have a lot of things to talk about in terms of Spurs. A lot of people seem to have thought they would have set their team up for at least the next month or so. Unfortunately, Spurs decided to totally ruin that, and now we have 4 players that were fairly highly owned that now have a problem with them. So we do have Romero, who gets sent off, Udogie, who gets sent off, Van de Ven and Maddison, who both picked up a slight injury. I think the only one who is certain that has to come out there is Romero. I think Udogie should only be banned for 1 game, Romero banned for the next 3, and Maddison and Van de Ven, we still have to wait for some information on them to see what the effectiveness, how bad their injury is really. But obviously this Romero transfer that I'm making here could apply to Van de Ven and Udogie as well. I think with Maddison, you kind of just wait, see if he plays on Saturday. If not, you just make the transfer to Rodri. Anyway, it's something that a lot of us were planning. We have spoke about it in recent weeks. So this Spurs injury crisis, red card crisis could kind of be a blessing in disguise, making transfers a lot easier for a lot of us, not really having to miss out on some players. But we'll have a look at Heung-min Son as well when we look at the fixture gains later. But for now, we're looking at the transfers. So in terms of Romero, Udogie and Van de Ven, we're looking at, I think these 3 players would be my 3 favourite picks. You can see the fixtures on the right hand side. Romero's is the one on the top with Wolves, Villa, City, West Ham and Newcastle. Obviously he does miss 3 of those, so we will be back on the 7th of December, which is a full month away, to play against West Ham. I do think Anderson could end up being a very, very good pick here. He is someone who has been picking up points kind of in the shadows a little bit, and he does have Everton, Luton, West Ham and Bournemouth in the next 4. Now these are games that Palace could easily pick up some clean sheets, and again they could easily get some passing tiers in there as well. It is 4 teams that don't really keep a lot of possession and aren't known for getting passes with their players, so Crystal Palace are probably going to be the ones keeping the ball there. So you could expect clean sheet against Everton, possible clean sheet against Luton, maybe not a clean sheet against West Ham away, but a clean sheet against Bournemouth as well. So that's 3 out of 4, and you would hope to pick up some passing in there. So you could be looking between 30 and 40 points for the next 4 games for Anderson, and he could end up being a very, very good transfer. Really for the short term as well, because you look at the day after that Bournemouth game and you can easily go back to Romero if you wanted, back when he has finished his suspension. I've also went for Lascelles. He's only 6.6 million, and we did get news that Botman is going to be out for an extended period of time. So Lascelles is probably nailed in that defence. He has played the last 5 league games as well, and Dan Burn will be out until the end of the season as well. So that's 2 main defenders for Newcastle that are out, and I think Lascelles definitely could take that spot. Again, 6.6 million, the same price as Bayer, so that could be a transfer as well if you've still got him. And the fixtures, again, they aren't brilliant. They do have Chelsea, United and Spurs in the next 5, but again, he really is just there as an enabler, just to sit there, pick up some points. We know how good the Newcastle defence can be, a lot better than the likes of Burnley if you're holding Bayer. Lascelles could get some passing and as well as some clean sheets, and at 6.6 million it does look like a very decent move. Then I went for Tsimikas as well if you haven't went for him already. Obviously it did get dropped at the weekend. I think that was more because of Luton's physicality. They didn't really want him playing. They'd rather have Gomez for his physical presence in that game, but I think Liverpool didn't really create much. Obviously it didn't work after getting the 1-1 draw against Luton, so I wouldn't be surprised if Tsimikas started again at the weekend. So for me, I think that would be my 3 picks. You could obviously go for someone like Hwang as well and cover the single game day. I think at this point now I would avoid going for Palhinha. He did pick up another booking at the weekend, which puts him on 4 yellow cards, which means 1 more yellow card and he'll be suspended. So if he picks a yellow card up at the weekend, then you don't even have him for the captaincy against Wolves. So I think for me, I would probably just leave him now. So I think it's got to be a Wolves player, or Leno, who is also an option if you are definitely looking for a captaincy on that day. So before we look at some fixture gains, let's take a look at some plans with Heung-min Son. Obviously we did, if you watched the overhaul video, have a look at some of the captaincy days, and Son was involved in quite a lot of those, being a captain for the next 4 or for at least 4 more days before the overhaul comes around. Now, if you're looking at the dates that those come around, is the Sunday on game week 16, the Friday on game week 19, the Saturday on game week 20, and the Sunday on game week 21. Now, these are very late on, so if you're sitting there thinking Spurs aren't looking great in terms of having a team left to play with, what do I really want to do with Heung-min Son? Obviously a lot of us were planning on taking him out for Rodri. We do have this captaincy in game week 16, so if we go to game week 16 here, that is the Sunday, which is this day here. I think considering that Spurs seem not like they have no defenders left, this could easily be a day that you have Watkins. Of course, Udogie will be back for this day anyway, They still have Porro. Van de Ven might not actually be injured, but they are going to have, I think, what will be Eric Dyer playing in defence. So they are going to start leaking some goals because he is just not that great. So I think you could easily cover someone like Son with an Ollie Watkins on that captaincy day, which means you're not going to need Son until the 15th of December as a captaincy. So you could bring him out now and bring him back in a month's time when Spurs really have their full team back. So in terms of getting back out, we look at the 3-for-1s. Keep him for the game on Saturday, and then you can just make that straight transfer to Rodri, and you're getting a 2-for-0, and then you just hold Rodri long term, and then you can look back on the 15th of December against Forest and get him back. And that's another fixture game as well. After City play against Luton, you can just go straight to Son for the captaincy. So I think that's something that looks pretty decent, and I think if you've got Maddison, it's a fairly reasonable transfer now as well, just a midfielder for a midfielder, and it makes it a lot easier for us. In terms of Romero and stuff as well, you can just go for whoever you want. Anderson plays on Saturday, Tsimikas plays on Sunday, and Lascelles plays on Saturday as well. So obviously there's no fixture gains there because Romero isn't going to be playing, so that really doesn't matter too much. Looking at some other fixture gains as well, there isn't really too much to go off of. There is a few 2-for-0s with like Everton playing on the Saturday, then not playing with till the Sunday. United as well, with a gap, and Spurs again. So it makes even more sense to probably move off the Spurs players. I think most people will have a Spurs player that's injured or sent off anyway, but there is a few 2-for-0s. Nothing that you would think you've got to make that transfer, because a 2-for-0 isn't the best fixture gain in the world, but they are there just in case anyone is looking to do something like that. But further looking at the transfers that we're possibly looking at making, obviously we were looking at bringing in someone like Anderson. You would only have him for 4 games because you probably don't want to have him for Liverpool, City, and then this Brighton game is a single day. So if you didn't have a Brighton player, you could always hold him through the Liverpool and City game, and then have him for the captaincy. I don't think it's probably the best move. I think you are better probably going for someone else. But they do have a blank after it, so again it could end up just being a skip. It's really up to you. If you want to make that transfer, I think these 4 games is really what you want to focus on. Looking at Lascelles, obviously Newcastle don't actually have the worst games. This is right all the way up to the overhaul. Obviously they do have Chelsea, United and Spurs. 2 of them are home games, which we know does make a big difference to Newcastle. Whether it's make a difference to get a clean sheet, I don't really know, but we know that Botman is out for an extended period of time. We don't have an exact date on his return yet, but he is someone that you probably could hold for a fair amount of time. Then obviously Tsimikas as well. Liverpool have fairly good fixtures, again pretty much up to game week 19 before they play United, Arsenal and Newcastle, and for all we know Robertson could be back then. I think he is supposed to be back out until the new year, but if he does come back early, you probably would get Tsimikas out at that point anyway, because the fixtures do get a bit harder. And then finally, as we move on to my own teams, again a very, very poor week, which pretty much everyone had anyway. It was 37 points and 33 points for me, just small rank drops, so kind of just a write-off week for most people anyway. No one really got any points. You know, it's a bad game week when Bayer is your second highest scoring player, someone who I've been desperately trying to get out, but we move on from that. We do have, in terms of the Spurs dilemma, I've not been affected too much since Maddison was probably going to be coming out anyway, so I've really only got Romero to deal with here. And looking at the transfers, Bayer is probably still going to come out, even though he has been getting passes. It is a tough one. I think, I don't know, I do still want to get in Tsimikas, but with the Romero dilemma, I need to get him out for someone, so he is obviously the priority transfer. Maddison, let's say we take him out for Rodri, which I think I will be doing at the weekend anyway. Easy transfer, more than happy to do that. Let's say Romero, I haven't decided myself exactly who I'm going to go with, but it will be one of the defenders that I've been mentioning. So let's say I did go with Joachim Andersen. I've got 1.7 mil in the bank, and that lets me take out Bayer for pretty much any of the mid-range defenders, whether that's Lascelles or Tsimikas. I'm not too sure on yet. In terms of captaincies, it's just going to be the ones that I mentioned earlier in the video. Saka will be that captain on the Saturday, and it'll be Salah on the Sunday. You can submit them now. In terms of the second team, again, this team's really not doing well. We're down to 28k, and just a lot of players that haven't been doing great. This team I do feel a lot more secure with, considering it does have Saliba in it. He is someone that I think is very, very capable of getting a lot of points in the next couple of weeks with Burnley and Luton. Easily teams that he could pick up some clean sheets. But again, Romero, let's say to Anderson, right there. And then again we can move on Bayer. This is a team that doesn't have as much budget in the bank, so Bayer could go to Lascelles in this team. One thing I am considering in a few weeks' time is moving Martinez onto Leno. I know I've been saying that I don't think goalkeeper transfers are worth it, but Martinez just hasn't been picking up saves points at all, so it's really just like 1-2 pointers every single time. There's one saved here in the last 5 games, so Leno could be a transfer that I make just before the Wolves captaincy. Hopefully he has been picking up some saves. Not that I expect many clean sheets from him, but like I said, he's a bit cheaper, and as long as a goalkeeper's picking up saves, I think you'll be totally fine with that. But yeah, again, I think with captains in this one, I'm going to go with Saka, and because this team is so far behind, it could be a week where I end up going with Watkins as a captain here, maybe going for a bit of a differential and hoping that he outperforms Salah and Haaland. But yeah, again, a couple transfers booked in, which is okay because the next few weeks I didn't have anything really planned in terms of transfers anyway, so hopefully we don't have any results like last night where we have to make 3-4 transfers, and I should still be on track to have 30 transfers in both teams by the time the overhaul comes around. But this is going to wrap up this week's episode of the Sky Game Week preview. Hopefully you weren't affected too much by yesterday's results, and you don't have 4 or 5 transfers to make this week. Hopefully we do get some news as well on Maddison and Van de Ven, and hopefully they do play at the weekend. But if you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new, and I will see you all in the next video.